The Black Demon is a 2023 American monster horror thriller film directed by Adrian Grunberg, with the screenplay written by Boise Esquerra based on a story by Carlos Cisco. The movie was produced under Highland Film Group along with BuzzFeed Studios, Mucho Mas Media, and Silk Mass, and it was distributed by The Avenue. Although the story is set on the Baja California peninsula in Mexico, the actual filming took place in the Dominican Republic, with principal photography happening between December 2021 and February 2022. The cinematography was handled by Antonio Riestra, the editing was done by Sam Bixali and V. Manu Medina, and the music was composed by Leonardo Heiblum and Jacobo Lieberman. The total runtime of the movie is around 100 minutes, and it is presented entirely in the English language. Talking about the overview of the movie, The Black Demon revolves around an oilman named Paul Sturges who decides to take his family on what he believes will be a relaxing vacation to Bahia Negra, a coastal town in Baja, Mexico, where one of his company's best-performing oil rigs is located. The official synopsis describes how Paul Sturges' idyllic family vacation turns into a nightmare when they encounter a ferocious megalodon shark that will stop at nothing to protect its territory. This basic premise sets up the entire horror experience, mixing themes of family survival with environmental revenge against humans who have damaged the ocean ecosystem through years of oil drilling. Moving into the plot details, when Paul and his family arrive at Bahia Negra, they are shocked to discover that the once vibrant and lively coastal town has become a decrepit ghost town. The locals who remain in the area warn Paul that the offshore oil platform has awakened something terrifying, referred to by the locals as El Demonio, or in English, the Black Demon. Despite these warnings, the family feels unsafe staying behind in the abandoned town, so they decide to follow Paul out to the offshore platform, hoping it will be safer than remaining on land. However, things take a horrifying turn almost immediately. As soon as the family and the boat crew reach the platform, the boat and the man who risked his life to bring them there are suddenly and ferociously attacked by a massive black shark, unlike anything anyone has seen before. This creature is not an ordinary shark. It is described as a shark of legend, a massive black-colored predator that has been terrorizing the local waters for a long time according to old fishermen's tales. Once stranded on the offshore oil rig, Paul and his family realize that the Black Demon shark is not simply attacking out of hunger, but appears to be acting almost as a guardian of the ocean, aggressively protecting nature against human threats caused by years of oil spillage and environmental destruction. The Black Demon is essentially a story about a vengeful megalodon-type shark, specifically a massive black shark that lurks off Mexico's Baja California peninsula, drawing comparisons to classic monster movies like Jaws and modern creature features like The Meg. Trapped on the platform with the creature circling below, Paul, his family, and a small group of men who escorted them are forced to find a way to survive. As the situation becomes increasingly desperate, the group realizes that escaping back to the village safely seems nearly impossible, because the Black Demon is relentless and clearly intent on killing every human connected to the rig that has been polluting its territory for years. The only real chance of survival becomes finding a way to either outsmart or kill the creature itself, but with limited resources, a damaged platform, and an enemy far stronger and smarter than anyone anticipated, every decision the family makes becomes a matter of life and death. The film builds tension through claustrophobic scenes on the rig, close encounters with the shark, and emotional moments between family members as they try to protect each other while figuring out an escape plan. Now coming to the cast of the movie, the lead role of Paul Sturges is played by Josh Lucas, an actor who has gained massive popularity in recent years for his role as the young version of John Dutton in the hit television series Yellowstone. Josh Lucas takes on the lead role of Paul, the man who comes face to face with the vengeful and very hungry shark, while Fernanda Regula, known for her role in Crime Macho, plays Ines, Paul's wife. Alongside them, the supporting cast includes Julio Cesar Cedillo as Cheto, Venus Ariel as Audrey Sturges who plays Paul's daughter, and Raul Mendez in the role of El Rey. Other notable cast members include Hector Jimenez as Chocolatito, Edgar Flores as Crazy Eyes, and Omar Chaparro in a supporting role. Together, this cast brings a mix of emotional family drama and intense survival horror to the screen, with Josh Lucas carrying much of the film as the desperate father trying to protect his wife and children from the relentless creature. When it comes to the release date, The Black Demon had its theatrical release on April 28, 2023, in the United States, with various other countries having slightly different release dates around the same time, including the Philippines on April 26, 2023, and Israel on April 27, 2023. After its theatrical run, the film was released on digital platforms on May 30, 2023, and it later arrived on DVD on July 11, 2023. This made the movie accessible to a wide audience both in cinemas and at home within just a couple of months of its initial release. For those interested in checking out the trailer, the official trailer for The Black Demon was released ahead of its theatrical debut and gives viewers a strong preview of the intense shark attacks, the eerie abandoned town setting, and the overall tone of dread that runs throughout the film. The trailer highlights key moments such as the family's arrival at the ghost town, the warnings from the locals about El Demonio, and the terrifying first attack on the boat near the oil platform. Watching the trailer gives a clear idea of the visual style and atmosphere of the movie, and it can easily be found on official movie trailer channels and major streaming platform pages dedicated to the film. In terms of overall reception, The Black Demon received mixed reviews from audiences and critics, with some appreciating the environmental message woven into a creature feature format, while others felt the execution was fairly average compared to other shark movies released around the same time. The film holds a fairly low rating on review platforms, reflecting the mixed response it received from viewers, despite having a runtime of 1 hour and 40 minutes. Even with mixed reviews, the film found an audience among fans of monster movies and shark thrillers, especially those who enjoy films that combine family drama with high-stakes survival horror. The story of The Black Demon begins with Paul Sturges, a hard-working oilman who has spent years overseeing offshore drilling operations along the Baja California coastline in Mexico. Despite his demanding career, Paul has been struggling to maintain a close relationship with his family, especially after spending long periods away from home for work. In an attempt to reconnect with his wife Ines and their 2 children, Audrey and their younger son, Paul decides to combine a business trip with a family vacation. He plans to visit Bahia Negra, a small coastal town that he remembers fondly from years earlier as a peaceful, lively place near one of his company's most productive offshore oil rigs. He believes the trip will be a perfect opportunity to show his family the beauty of the area, while also checking in on the rig before signing off on a final inspection report. When the family arrives in Bahia Negra, however, they are met with an unsettling sight. The town that Paul remembered as colorful, busy, and full of life is now almost completely abandoned. Buildings are crumbling, streets are empty, and there is an eerie silence hanging over the entire area. Confused and uneasy, Paul tries to find someone who can explain what happened to the town while also helping him reach the offshore platform for his inspection. Eventually, the family encounters a small group of locals who have remained behind despite the town's decline. These locals are visibly frightened and reluctant to talk at first, but they eventually warn Paul and his family about something dangerous lurking in the waters near the oil rig. According to the locals, the oil platform's continued drilling has disturbed something ancient that lives in the deep waters off the coast, a creature the fishermen have spoken about in legends for generations. They call it El Demonio, or the Black Demon, a massive black shark unlike anything modern science has documented. The locals explain that the creature has been responsible for the disappearance of fishermen and sailors over the years, and that the recent oil spills and underwater drilling activity seem to have angered it even further, causing it to attack anything that comes near the rig. Paul, being a practical man focused on his job, initially dismisses much of this as superstition and old folklore, though the fear in the eyes of the townspeople leaves a lingering sense of unease with his family. Despite the warnings, Paul insists that he needs to reach the oil platform to complete his inspection, as the future of the rig and possibly his job depend on it. Ines and the kids, uncomfortable with the idea of staying alone in the deserted town, decide to accompany him to the platform instead of waiting behind. A local boatman agrees to take the family out to the rig, navigating through calm but ominous-looking waters. As they approach the massive offshore platform, everything seems normal at first, giving the family a brief sense of relief. That relief is shattered almost immediately after they board the platform. As the boatman attempts to leave and head back toward the shore, the water around the boat suddenly becomes violent. Without warning, an enormous black shark rises from beneath the surface and attacks the boat with terrifying speed and power, destroying it within seconds and killing the boatman before anyone can react. Paul and his family watch in horror from the platform as the creature disappears back into the dark water, leaving behind nothing but wreckage and the chilling realization that they are now stranded on the rig with no way to call for help and no way back to shore. As the family tries to process what just happened, they begin exploring the platform and discover that they are not entirely alone. A small group of workers who had remained on the rig after most of the crew evacuated due to the strange disturbances are still present, struggling to keep the platform operational and safe. These men reveal that they too have witnessed attacks from the creature and have lost colleagues to it. With communication equipment damaged and the platform's structural integrity slowly weakening due to past attacks, the group realizes they are in a desperate situation. Throughout the film, tension builds as Paul, Ines, their children, and the surviving workers attempt to come up with a plan to either repair their means of communication, signal for rescue, or find a way to escape the platform entirely. Every attempt to leave or send for help is met with resistance from the shark, which seems to sense any movement near or in the water and reacts with terrifying aggression. The creature is shown to be highly intelligent, patient, and almost calculated in the way it stalks the platform, picking off those who attempt to escape or who venture too close to the edges of the rig. As the story progresses, the family dynamic becomes a central focus. Paul, who has been emotionally distant due to his work, is forced to confront his shortcomings as a father and husband while trying to protect his children from a relentless and seemingly unstoppable predator. Audrey, his daughter, plays a significant role in the story, showing courage and resourcefulness as the situation grows more dire. The bond between the family members is tested repeatedly as they witness members of the rig's crew being killed one by one, either through direct attacks from the shark or through accidents caused by the chaos and panic the creature's presence creates. Midway through the film, the group discovers more about the creature's connection to the oil rig itself. It becomes clear that years of oil leaks and environmental damage caused by the drilling operations have severely affected the surrounding marine ecosystem, and the black demon shark appears to be reacting to this destruction, almost as if it is protecting its territory from further harm. This revelation adds a layer of moral complexity to the story, as Paul begins to grapple with the realization that his own company's actions may have played a role in awakening and provoking the creature. As the situation on the platform becomes increasingly unstable, with structural damage worsening and resources running low, the survivors realize that simply waiting for rescue is no longer an option. They begin formulating a plan to either repair a small boat or vessel still present on the rig, or to find another way to signal nearby ships or aircraft for help. However, every attempt is fraught with danger, as the shark continues to attack any time someone enters the water or gets too close to the platform's edges. The climax of the film centers around the final, desperate attempt by Paul and the remaining survivors to either escape the platform or confront the creature directly in order to ensure their survival. This involves high-tension sequences where characters must navigate flooded sections of the rig, dodge attacks from the shark, and make split-second decisions that determine who survives and who does not. Sacrifices are made along the way, with some characters giving their lives to protect others or to create opportunities for escape. In the final act, Paul, Ines, and their children find themselves in a life-or-death confrontation with the black demon shark itself. Drawing on everything they have learned about the creature's behavior throughout the film, including its reactions to certain stimuli and its territorial nature, the family must use a combination of courage, quick thinking, and teamwork to survive the encounter. The resolution of the film ties back to the environmental themes established earlier, suggesting that the only way to truly be safe from the creature is to either escape its territory entirely or address the underlying damage that provoked its aggression in the first place. By the end of the movie, the surviving members of the family manage to escape the platform, though not without significant losses and lasting trauma from their ordeal. The experience fundamentally changes Paul's perspective, both on his career and on what truly matters in life, as he reflects on the cost of his company's environmental negligence and the impact it had on both the natural world and his own family. The film closes with a sense of survival tinged with loss, leaving audiences with a lingering message about humanity's relationship with nature and the consequences of disturbing forces beyond our understanding. Josh Lucas, who plays the lead role of Paul Sturges in The Black Demon, was born as Joshua Lucas Easy Den Maurer on June 20, 1971, in Little Rock, Arkansas, in the United States. His parents, Michelle Lefevre, a nurse midwife, and Don Maurer, an emergency room doctor, were both deeply involved in anti-nuclear activism during his childhood. Because of their political activities and the safety concerns that came with them, Josh's family moved more than 30 times before he turned 13 years old, living in various small towns across the southern United States. This nomadic upbringing gave him exposure to many different environments and people at a young age, which many believe shaped his adaptability and emotional depth as an actor later in life. Eventually, his family settled in a small town called Gig Harbor near Tacoma, Washington, where Josh was finally able to experience a more stable childhood for the first time. It was during his early years, while his family lived on Sullivan's Island in coastal South Carolina, that Josh had his first brush with filmmaking. At around 8 years old, he secretly watched a small Canadian film production shooting a dramatic scene near his home, hiding in the sand dunes to observe the actors and crew at work. This experience left a lasting impression on him and sparked his initial interest in acting and filmmaking, an interest that would only grow stronger as he got older. After completing his high school education at Gig Harbor High School in 1989, Josh decided not to pursue a college degree. Instead, at the age of 19, he made the bold decision to move to Hollywood to chase his dream of becoming a professional actor. In the early stages of his career, Josh took on small guest roles in various television shows, including True Colors, Life Goes On, Parker Lewis Can't Lose, and Jake and the Fat Man. These early roles were modest, but they gave him valuable experience in front of the camera and allowed him to learn from more experienced actors and directors. One of his early notable roles came in the television movie Class of '61, where he portrayed the historical figure George Armstrong Custer. Feeling that his career needed a different kind of growth, Josh moved to New York City in 1994, where he focused on improving his craft through training in movement, voice, and acting technique. This period of dedication paid off when he landed a major role in an off-Broadway production of Terrence McNally's controversial play Corpus Christi, which opened in 1998 and received significant critical attention. His film career began to gain real momentum in the year 2000, when he appeared in two notable films, American Psycho and You Can Count on Me, both of which helped introduce him to wider audiences and showcased his range as an actor. The following year, he appeared in A Beautiful Mind, a critically acclaimed film that further boosted his profile in Hollywood. However, it was his role opposite Reese Witherspoon in the romantic comedy Sweet Home Alabama in 2002 that truly catapulted him into mainstream stardom, making him a recognizable face for audiences around the world. From that point onward, Josh continued to build a diverse filmography, taking on roles in dramas, thrillers, and action films alike, demonstrating his versatility as a performer. In addition to his film work, Josh has also made a significant impact on television. One of his most notable television roles came when he was cast in Taylor Sheridan's hit series Yellowstone, where he played a younger version of Kevin Costner's character, John Dutton, appearing in flashback sequences that explored the character's past. This role introduced him to an entirely new generation of fans and further cemented his status as a respected actor in the industry. Beyond acting, Josh has also ventured into entrepreneurship, co-owning a food company, and he has been involved in various philanthropic efforts over the years, including work with organizations focused on health awareness and environmental causes. On a personal level, Josh was previously married to Jessica Enriquez, with whom he shares a son named Noah, born in 2012. Although the couple eventually separated, they have continued to co-parent their son amicably. After his divorce, Josh kept much of his personal life private, occasionally being linked to other relationships over the years. More recently, in July 2025, Josh married Brianna Ruffalo, a well-known meteorologist, in a private ceremony away from the public eye. Despite his fame and success, Josh Lucas has maintained a relatively low-profile personal life, choosing to focus on his work and family rather than seeking constant media attention. Today, with an estimated net worth of around $10 million, Josh continues to take on a wide variety of roles across film and television, balancing his acting career with his business ventures and family life. Moving on to Fernanda Arregula, who plays the role of Inés, Paul's wife, in The Black Demon. She was born on September 24, 1981, in Santiago, Chile, as Fernanda Loreto Arregula Arroyo. She grew up alongside her three sisters, Isadora, Francisca, and Alejandra, in a family that supported her creative interests from a young age. Before pursuing acting professionally, Fernanda was actually involved in competitive synchronized swimming, representing Chile at a high level and even winning a national synchronized swimming championship. This athletic background gave her discipline and physical conditioning that would later serve her well in physically demanding acting roles. Fernanda attended the Kent School in the Providencia area of Santiago, where she first developed a passion for theater and began appearing in school plays and local stage productions. After finishing her schooling, she enrolled at Doc UC, where she studied scenic communication and graduated with a degree related to performing arts in the early 2000s. Her professional acting career began in the early 2000s with appearances in Chilean television productions, including the youth-oriented telenovela 16, where she played the character Matilda Arias. This role helped introduce her to Chilean audiences and marked the beginning of her journey in the entertainment industry. Throughout the 2000s and into the 2010s, Fernanda continued to build her career in Chilean television and film, taking on a variety of roles that showcased her range as an actress. She appeared in projects such as Corazón de María, where she played a significant supporting character, as well as other television series like Hios del Monte. Her film career also began to take shape during this period, with her first movie role coming in Perjudicame Carino, followed by other notable Chilean films. In 2009, she took on a role in the drama Film Drama, and in 2011, she starred in Metro Cuadrado, further establishing her presence in Chilean cinema. One of the more unique and memorable roles in Fernanda's filmography came in 2012, when she starred in the action-crime comedy Bring Me the Head of the Machine Gun Woman, in which she played the lead character, a role that gained attention both in Chile and internationally for its bold and unconventional style. This role helped open doors for her to work on projects outside of Chile, eventually leading to opportunities in the United States and Mexico. In 2014, she appeared in the fantasy horror film Whispers of the Forest, further diversifying her acting portfolio across different genres. Fernanda's career took a significant international turn when she was cast in the Netflix series Narcos, Mexico in 2018, where she played the character Maria Elvira, the wife of a character portrayed by actor Diego Luna. This role introduced her to a massive global audience and significantly raised her profile outside of Latin America. The same year, she also appeared in several feature films, including No Estoy Loca, American Hueso, and Imprisoned, the latter of which saw her acting alongside well-known actors such as Lawrence Fishburne and Juan Pablo Raba. In 2019, she starred in the drama film After Her, working alongside other international actors. In addition to her work in Narcos, Mexico, Fernanda also appeared in the film Crime Macho, which starred and was directed by Clint Eastwood, further showcasing her ability to work alongside major Hollywood figures. Throughout her career, Fernanda has become known for portraying strong, complex, and courageous female characters, a reputation that aligns well with her role as Inés in The Black Demon, where she plays a mother fighting to protect her family in the face of an unimaginable threat. On a personal note, Fernanda has been open about being bisexual and has spoken about various relationships throughout her life, including a past engagement to Stefano Benaglia. She currently lives and works between Los Angeles, Mexico, and Chile, comfortably performing in both English and Spanish, which has allowed her to take on a wide range of international projects throughout her career. With a career spanning over 2 decades and credits in approximately 40 films and television series, Fernanda Arregula continues to be recognized as one of the most talented and versatile actresses to come out of Chile in recent years. When it comes to the budget of The Black Demon, the film was made on a relatively modest scale compared to other monster movies of its time. According to information shared on IMDb, the total production budget for the film was around $8.5 million, which is considered quite low for a creature feature involving a giant shark and elaborate water-based set pieces. Despite this limited budget, the filmmakers managed to create a fairly convincing offshore oil rig set, underwater sequences, and CGI shark effects, showing that the team behind the movie had to be resourceful and creative in how they used their resources. In terms of box office performance, the film did not perform particularly well during its theatrical run. Worldwide, The Black Demon earned a total of approximately $3.4 million at the box office, meaning it did not come close to recovering its production budget through theatrical releases alone. The film opened in various international markets such as Spain, the United Arab Emirates, Romania, South Africa, Portugal, and Croatia, with most of these regions contributing relatively small amounts to the overall earnings. Given the modest budget, this box office result was seen as underwhelming, and many critics noted that the film came and went without making much of an impact during its time in cinemas. However, the story of The Black Demon does not end with its theatrical performance. After its disappointing run in cinemas, the film found a second life when it was released for digital streaming. It eventually made its way to Amazon's Prime Video platform, and surprisingly, it became a massive hit on the streaming service. The film spent an entire week at the very top of Prime Video's most watched titles in the United States, beating out other popular shows and movies that were trending at the same time. This unexpected streaming success led to discussions about the possibility of producing a sequel, since a film made on such a limited budget managing to top a major streaming platform was seen as a significant achievement for the production team. One of the producers explained that the film was meant to fill a gap in the genre, since shark and monster movies rarely featured a strong Latino cultural angle, and this unique approach seemed to resonate with streaming audiences even if it did not translate into theatrical success. Now coming to some of the funny and interesting moments that happened on set during the making of the film, one of the most memorable stories shared by Josh Lucas involves the construction of the oil rig set itself. According to Lucas, the production team built a large structure resembling a small offshore oil rig inside a massive water tank that was directly connected to the ocean. This meant that real ocean water would flow in and out of the tank, but the tank itself remained relatively clean, almost like a giant swimming pool. The interesting and somewhat funny part of this story is that the construction crew had never built a metal structure inside this particular tank before. Because the structure remained stationary in the water for an extended period, the metal began to rust and change color over time in ways the crew had not anticipated, leading to some last-minute adjustments and amusement among the cast and crew about how the set was almost developing a personality of its own as filming progressed. Another light-hearted aspect of the production came from the physical demands placed on the actors, particularly Josh Lucas, who spent long hours in the water for many of the underwater and snorkeling scenes. He has spoken about spending 8 to 10 hours a day underwater during certain sequences, and while this was physically exhausting, he also described it as a strangely enjoyable challenge, comparing it almost to an endurance activity rather than traditional acting work. The cast often joked about how much time they spent either soaking wet or pretending to be terrified of a shark that, in reality, was not present on set at all, since the megalodon itself was added entirely through computer-generated effects during post-production. There is also a particularly memorable and unintentionally comedic line from the film that has become a fan favorite due to its delivery and timing. In one tense scene, Paul Sturges gets into a heated argument with another character about the oil spill and the legend of the Black Demon. Just as the argument reaches its peak, with insults being thrown back and forth, Paul defensively snaps back about his shirt being a specific color, insisting it is burgundy rather than red, right in the middle of an otherwise serious confrontation. This sudden shift from intense drama to oddly specific and almost comedic detail caught many viewers off guard and has since become one of the more talked about and humorous moments from the film, often referenced by fans and reviewers as an example of the film's occasionally over-the-top tone. Additionally, Josh Lucas has spoken in interviews about the contrast between the serious tone of the film's environmental message and the inherently campy nature of giant shark movies as a genre. He has joked about how seriously the cast tried to approach certain scenes, despite knowing that audiences would likely be watching primarily for the thrill of seeing a giant shark attack an oil rig rather than for deep, emotional drama. This self-aware sense of humor among the cast, combined with the physically demanding and occasionally chaotic nature of filming on a partially flooded set, contributed to a production environment where moments of genuine tension on screen were often balanced out by laughter and light-hearted banter behind the scenes. The Black Demon, despite being a relatively low-budget creature feature, actually carries a surprising amount of cultural and historical depth woven into its story, much of which draws from Mexican folklore, Aztec mythology, and real-world environmental issues tied to the oil industry along the Baja California coast. Understanding these layers helps explain why the film, despite its modest reception in theaters, resonated with certain audiences who appreciated the cultural texture beneath the surface of what otherwise appears to be a straightforward shark thriller. One of the most significant cultural elements in the film is its connection to the Aztec deity Tlaloc, who was historically worshipped as the god of rain, water, fertility, and natural forces in ancient Mesoamerican civilization. In actual Aztec religious tradition, Tlaloc was considered an extremely powerful and somewhat fearsome god, often associated with both the life-giving properties of water and rain, as well as the destructive power of storms, floods, and droughts. Within the Black Demon, Tlaloc is referenced as an Aztec god whose real-life backstory lends credibility to the belief held by one of the local characters, Chato, that the deity sent the giant shark as a form of punishment. By incorporating this historical religious figure into the narrative, the filmmakers attempt to ground the fictional megalodon shark within a framework of genuine pre-Columbian belief systems, suggesting that the creature is not simply a random monster, but rather a manifestation of ancient natural forces reacting to modern human transgressions against the environment. IMDb. This connection to Aztec mythology also ties into a broader theme found throughout the film regarding the relationship between indigenous belief systems and modern industrial capitalism. The religious undertones present in the film position the humans, particularly the oil company, as the true villains of the story rather than the shark itself, highlighting the destructive consequences of human greed and emphasizing the importance of acknowledging and correcting these actions. This framing reflects a long-standing cultural narrative found in many indigenous traditions throughout Mexico and Latin America more broadly, where natural disasters, animal attacks, or unexplainable phenomena are sometimes interpreted as a form of cosmic balance being restored after humans have disrupted the natural order through exploitation of land, water, or resources. IMDb. The setting of the film along the Baja California peninsula is also culturally significant, as this region of Mexico has a long and complicated history tied to fishing communities, coastal tourism, and more recently, offshore oil exploration. Baja California has historically been home to numerous small fishing villages where local folklore often includes stories of legendary sea creatures, cursed waters, and supernatural beings believed to inhabit the ocean depths. The film draws heavily on this oral storytelling tradition, presenting the legend of the Black Demon shark as something that has been passed down among local fishermen for generations long before the events of the movie take place. This use of oral legend as a narrative device reflects a broader pattern in Latin American folklore, where stories of supernatural creatures often serve as cautionary tales meant to warn against venturing too far into dangerous or sacred natural territories. From a historical and industrial perspective, the film also touches on real-world concerns regarding offshore oil drilling along the coasts of Mexico, an industry that has had significant environmental and economic impacts on coastal communities for decades. The fictional company depicted in the film, referred to as Nixon Oil, represents a broader critique of multinational energy corporations that have historically operated in Latin American countries, often extracting resources while leaving behind environmental damage that disproportionately affects local populations. The narrative directly addresses this through Paul Sturges' role as an inspector for Nixon Oil, with the climax of the film not only focusing on defeating the shark, but also forcing Paul to confront his own complicity in what is referred to within the story as the Nixon Oil scandal. This element of corporate accountability reflects real historical tensions that have existed between foreign-owned oil companies and local communities throughout Mexico, particularly in coastal regions where oil spills and drilling accidents have caused lasting damage to marine ecosystems and the livelihoods of fishermen who depend on those waters. IMDb. Another important cultural aspect of the film is its emphasis on Latino representation within the monster movie and creature feature genre, which has historically been dominated by American and European productions with predominantly white casts and settings. The producers of the film have spoken openly about wanting to create a shark movie with what they described as a distinctly Latino perspective, something they felt had rarely, if ever, been done before in this particular subgenre of horror. By setting the story in Mexico, incorporating Spanish-language dialogue alongside English, and centering the plot around indigenous mythology rather than purely Western horror tropes, the filmmakers attempted to carve out a unique cultural niche within a genre that has traditionally relied on more generic, Americanized settings and storylines. The film also reflects historical patterns seen in international film production, as it was actually shot in the Dominican Republic rather than in Mexico, despite the story being set along the Baja California coast. This decision to film in the Dominican Republic rather than in Mexico, where the story actually takes place, reflects common practices within the film industry where production locations are often chosen based on cost, infrastructure, and logistical considerations rather than strict geographical accuracy, with various locations throughout the Dominican Republic being used to stand in for the Mexican setting, while certain scenes involving the fictional megalodon were filmed in studio environments due to the technical requirements of creating the creature through visual effects. This kind of practice has a long history in international filmmaking, where countries like the Dominican Republic, with their favorable climates, coastal geography, and film-friendly production incentives, often serve as substitute filming locations for stories set in other parts of Latin America or the Caribbean. IMDb. Finally, the ending of the film carries a culturally significant message that aligns with many traditional narratives found in indigenous storytelling, where balance with nature can only be restored through sacrifice rather than outright victory or domination. Rather than presenting a typical Hollywood-style triumphant ending where the human characters simply defeat the monster and return to normal life, the film instead concludes with a sense of loss and reflection, emphasizing themes of sacrifice, environmental reckoning, and the idea that humanity must answer for the damage it has caused to the natural world. This type of ending reflects a broader cultural perspective found in many Latin American and indigenous traditions, where harmony between humans and nature is viewed as something that must be actively maintained and respected, rather than something that can simply be conquered or controlled through technology and industrial progress. Taken together, these cultural and historical elements show that while The Black Demon may appear on the surface to be just another low-budget shark movie, it actually attempts to engage with deeper themes related to indigenous mythology, environmental justice, corporate accountability, and Latino representation within a genre that has historically lacked diverse perspectives. Whether or not the film succeeds in fully exploring these themes is debatable given its mixed critical reception, but the intention behind incorporating such rich cultural and historical context into a creature feature is something that sets it apart from many other films within the same genre. The Black Demon is filled with several layers of irony when examined closely, both in terms of its production history and the themes it tries to convey, and looking at these details gives a much richer understanding of the film beyond its surface-level plot as a shark thriller. One of the most striking ironies of the film lies in its central message about corporate greed and environmental destruction caused by oil companies, particularly through the fictional company Nixon Oil. The film positions this company as the true villain of the story, blaming it for years of pollution, oil spills, and ecological damage that ultimately provoke the wrath of an ancient sea creature tied to Aztec mythology. The irony here is that the very name chosen for this fictional oil company, Nixon Oil, carries strong historical connotations tied to Richard Nixon, a former president of the United States whose administration is often associated in public memory with controversies surrounding corporate influence, environmental policy debates, and broader themes of institutional corruption during the early 1970s. While the filmmakers may not have intended a direct historical reference, the choice of name inevitably evokes associations with political and corporate scandal, adding an unintentional but fitting layer of irony to a film that critiques corporate malpractice. Another layer of irony comes from the film's central creature itself, the megalodon shark. In real-world history and paleontology, the megalodon is a species of giant shark that is widely accepted by scientists to have gone extinct millions of years ago, long before humans existed. The irony of using a creature that has been extinct for millions of years as a symbol of nature's revenge against modern industrial pollution is quite striking, since the very premise relies on something from the deep prehistoric past returning to punish humanity for very recent, modern-day environmental damage. This creates an interesting contradiction where ancient prehistoric nature is framed as the protector against modern industrial nature, blending timelines that would never realistically intersect, yet using that blend as the moral core of the story. There is also significant irony found in the production history of the film itself. The story is set along the Baja California peninsula in Mexico, deeply rooted in Mexican folklore, Aztec mythology, and the cultural identity of Mexican fishing communities. However, the film was not actually filmed in Mexico at all. Instead, principal photography took place in the Dominican Republic, a completely different country with its own distinct culture, history, and geography. This means that a film attempting to authentically represent Mexican legends, Aztec religious symbolism, and the specific environmental history of the Baja coastline was constructed almost entirely on a different island nation thousands of miles away, raising questions about authenticity even as the film tries to present itself as culturally grounded and respectful of the traditions it draws from. Adding to this irony, the producers of the film publicly emphasized their goal of creating a shark movie with what they described as a distinctly Latino perspective, aiming to fill what they saw as an underserved gap in the genre. Yet the film itself was distributed by the Avenue and involved production companies based primarily in the United States, including BuzzFeed Studios, a company more widely known for digital media content rather than traditional film production. The irony lies in the fact that a film aiming to highlight underrepresented Latino voices and stories within Hollywood was largely backed and distributed through mainstream American corporate entities, the very type of large-scale corporate structures that the film's narrative seems to criticize through its portrayal of Nixon Oil. Perhaps one of the most notable ironies surrounding the film involves its commercial performance. Despite being made on a relatively low budget of around $8.5 million, the film performed quite poorly during its theatrical release, earning only around $3.4 million worldwide, far below its production costs. Critics largely dismissed the film, giving it low ratings and describing it as forgettable within an already crowded genre of shark and monster movies. However, the irony comes later, when the film was released for streaming on Amazon Prime Video. Despite its poor theatrical performance and largely negative critical reception, the film unexpectedly became the #1 most watched title on the platform for an entire week, surpassing other high-profile titles that had received significantly more attention and higher production budgets. A film that was largely written off as a failure in cinemas ended up becoming one of the more talked about streaming successes of that year, leading to actual discussions about producing a sequel, something that seemed almost unthinkable given its initial reception. There is also an ironic contrast within the film's narrative structure itself regarding its tone. The story attempts to deliver a serious message about environmental responsibility, corporate accountability, and respect for indigenous beliefs and natural forces. However, many of the film's most memorable moments, at least according to audience reactions, come from unintentionally comedic dialogue and over-the-top character interactions that undercut the seriousness of the film's intended message. A prime example of this is the now famous moment where, in the middle of an intense and emotionally charged confrontation about corporate responsibility for environmental destruction, the lead character suddenly becomes defensive about the specific color of his shirt, insisting it is burgundy rather than red. This moment, meant to occur during a dramatic and tense exchange, instead became one of the most quoted and humorous scenes from the film, ironically overshadowing the very serious themes the scene was attempting to convey. Finally, there is an underlying irony in the casting of Josh Lucas as the lead character, Paul Sturges, an oil company inspector who must confront his own complicity in environmental destruction throughout the film. Around the same period, Lucas had gained significant mainstream popularity for his role in the television series Yellowstone, playing a younger version of a character whose family's wealth and power are deeply tied to land ownership, resource control, and generational conflict over how that land should be used and protected. The thematic overlap between his role in Yellowstone and his role in The Black Demon, both involving questions of land, resources, environmental responsibility, and generational consequences of exploitation, creates an interesting parallel in his career, where he repeatedly finds himself portraying characters who must reckon with the environmental and ethical costs of industries built around resource extraction. Taken together, these ironic historical and production details reveal that The Black Demon, despite being widely dismissed as a forgettable low-budget creature feature, actually contains a surprising number of layered contradictions, from its choice of company names and extinct prehistoric creatures used to symbolize modern environmental anger, to its production location, distribution backing, critical reception versus streaming success, and even the unintentional humor that emerged from scenes meant to be taken seriously. These ironies, whether intentional or coincidental, add an additional dimension to the film that goes beyond its straightforward plot as a survival horror story about a family fighting off a giant shark.